Ready? Audio. Yes, good morning, children. We are going through a chapter called as the rise of nationalism in Europe. And if you look at these events which are created in the rise of nationalism in Europe, and if you are, I think you have gone through the textbook, the incidents which happened in Europe, which is summarized in some content in this chapter. And when you look at this first part, when you look at this first part, you are able to see that about French Revolution, small incidents in French Revolution, French Revolution of 1789. You are able to see the concepts such as the fatherland or the citizens, and through these concepts the idea of a nation is coming into the minds of the people, a French flag, a States General, etc. And the revolutionaries, they use language as a medium to give importance towards nationalism. A States General later was renamed into National Assembly. We studied it. And after some time, then came the Napoleon as the ruler of France. Then came the Napoleon as the ruler of France. He introduced some revolutionary principles in the French context. I hope you understood that main part. And he recreated the monarchical style of government in France, still the monarchical style of government in France, but he introduced some revolutionaries. He introduced some revolutionary ideas in French context that we call it as Napoleon's civil code, that we call it as Napoleon's civil code, or what is the other name, civil code of 1804 is the other name of Napoleon's civil code. We studied it. And when Napoleon's civil code was introduced, everyone liked it, but later Napoleon turned into a disturbance for everyone. Later Napoleon turned into a disturbance for every people who love their ruler very much. Napoleon's army began to be creating problems for them, and later began to have some more problems. Increased taxation was a policy of Napoleon, and forced the consumption. The French armies, people in Europe, they should be a part of this French army. Likewise, there are so many problems during the time of Napoleon's rule. Then Europe, if you look at the mid-18th century, making of nationalism in Europe, second part, we came up to the around aristocracy. Anyway, we will have a summary and then we will go to start following it. In Europe, in the mid-18th century, there was no nation state as we know them today. Today we know Germany, today we know Italy, today we know Switzerland. These kingdoms were not existing in Europe at that time. These kingdoms were divided into duchies, cantons, and the rulers were ruling autonomous territories. There is no unified country in the name of a unified country, in the name of a there is a unified country in the name of a particular language or any identity. Eastern Europe and Central Europe were under the control of autocratic monarchies, or monarchical style of government which is having their own power. And if you look at the Habsburg Empire, who ruled over Austria-Hungary region, It was a patchwork of many people or many different types of people, many different types of people who lived in that Habsburg Empire, who were coming under the in Austria-Hungary region. And if you look at if you look at this, the language Galicia, it's a region in the aristocracy spoke Polish. In Hungary, half of the population spoke Magyar. You must remember these two languages which were spoken in these regions. And in Bohemia and the Slovaks of the north, Slovenians in Caronia, Croats of south, Romans of east, Transylvania. So there was a differences in different regions of Europe. Still there is a sense of political unity. So allegiance towards or connection towards their emperor is their common identity, despite of these all differences in different aspects, despite of these differences in different aspects. Next is about the aristocracy and middle class. So how does this concept of nationalization emerge? How does this concept of so the only how does though these differences or the only binding of these diverse groups is their common allegiance towards their emperor. And how does this concept of nationalism emerge in between them? So even though if you look at these types of differences among these countries, these factors, there are some factors which led to the rise of nationalism, and among them there is some important factors are then first of all we will do the aristocracy and the middle class. So if you look at the aristocracy or the rich people in Europe, and one more class has been evolved, that is the middle class. In the middle class, if you look at this new middle class, you are able to see in class 9 textbook, that is these middle class, they earn money through trade related aspects. These middle class, they earn money through trading things overseas, etc. You are able to know about this middle class. And socially and politically, the dominant class of the continent, which continent that we speaking is that we are explaining is Europe, that is aristocracy is the dominant class in the continent. Socially and politically, if you look at the page 8 of your textbook, socially and politically means in society their words are getting more important than anything. That is what we are saying. Politically, in connection with the king, that is what they are saying, in connection with the king. The landed aristocracy was the dominant class, and the members of this class were united. The members of these class were united, and the members of this class were united, and they by a common way of life, or what does the writer mean by it? What does the writer mean by it? What does the writer mean by it is through religious practices or through life styles, they are united, despite of there is some regional divisions. And these landed aristocratic groups, if you look at the culture of these landed aristocratic groups, they have estates are large farmlands. If you look at page 8, if you take your textbook and Take page 8, you are able to see they have estate, they have large farmlands in the countryside. What is this countryside? Out of this out of these urban areas, they are having dominance, and they are also having town houses, and they are also having these town houses or houses within the towns. They spoke French for the purpose of diplomacy. When they go to the rulers, they uses French language. So which language was used by them when they for their diplomacy? That is French. These families, they were connected with ties of marriage. So aristocracy will have a marriage relationship with even an aristocratic member. That you must understand. They are connecting towards their their marriages, through marriages, and they are small in group. They are small in group. And one more thing that you want, the majority of the population in Europe at that time was peasantry group or peasant community, were the majority of the group. To the west of this, or towards the west of the Europe, the bulk of land was formed by tenants and small owners. So large areas which was under the control of aristocratic members, lands were connected towards lands were formed by tenants and small owners. Eastern Central Europe, there was vast estates which was cultivated, or in which cultivation was done by serfs, SERFS. So in Eastern and Central Europe, the majority of the peasants, they were farmers. The majority of the peasants, and they were farmers, and the aristocratic members, they were the dominant class. They were the dominant class in Europe at that times. The aristocratic members, they were the dominant class in Europe at that time, and these aristocratic members, they were connected through marriages. Bulk of the land was cultivated by peasants. And if you look at the serfs, is a status of many peasants under feudalism. Or if you look at who is called as a serf. Serf is a person, or is a peasant who is under a feudal lord. So majority of the lands in the Eastern Central Europe was cultivated by peasants. Was by serfs. In the Western central part, in the western and in the central parts of Europe, there is industrial production. And what is the meaning of this industrial production? In the place of small laborers, units, industrial machines will be used. And the trade is meaning for a growth of towns and emergence of commercial class. So in the western part of the Europe, Central Europe, industrial units were presented, and with the help of the trade, the towns and commercial classes, commercial classes were emerged, And these commercial classes and towns were emerging in the western part of the Europe and in the central part of the Europe. How does they emerge? They emerge due to the industrial production in Europe. Industrial production in Europe. In industrialization, then what is this industrialization or industrial revolution? In the place of machines, if we use, in the place of human beings, if we use machines, we call it as industrial revolution. This has started in 17th, 18th century in Britain. Later, it began to be transported towards different parts of the world. That is called as industrialization or industrial revolution in Europe. It has begun in England. So there is one word question in which where does this industrialization has begun? It has begun in England in the second half of the 18th century. In which century industrialization has begun? In the second half of the 18th century. If you look at in France, if you look at in other parts of German states, it occurred only during 18th century. So 18th century middle in England, industrialization has started. Later it moved towards other parts of the France, Germany only in the 19th century. So industrialization has occurred in 19th century. So Western Central Europe, what is the thing which is going on? I think you understood industrial production and trade is also happening. There is one commercial class. Then what is this commercial class? What is this commercial class? For commercial class is those class in the society who buy and sell things. Buy and sell things. And industrialization, industrial revolution, it has started in which country? In England. And in the second half of the 18th, in which century industrialization has happened? Second half of the 18th century. In France, Germany, in which century industrialization has happened? In the 19th century. In the wake of new social group, new middle class, that is the new social group. Working class population, middle classes made up of industrialists, businessmen, professionals in the wake of new social came into being. So a new social class is coming up, that is this middle class people. It included working class population, middle class is made up of industrialists, businessmen, professionals. So earlier in French society, how many social groups was there? I think you know it. First stage, second stage, third stage. In between this system, in between this system, a new social class is emerging. A new social class is emerging. That is called as the middle class people. This included working class population, industrialists, businessmen, professionals, etc. And in the Central Eastern Europe, these groups are smaller in number. Which group? Shall I ask a question? Which group? New social class or a middle class group which was lesser in number? Which was lesser in number? In which places they are lesser in number? Central Europe, Eastern Europe. They are educated people. They are liberal middle classes. That the ideas of national unity following the abolition of aristocratic privileges gain popularity in this new social class. In this new social class which was presented in Central Eastern Europe, these groups, they were smaller in number, the late 19th century. They are educated people. They follow the idea called as liberalism, or the word liberalism means freedom, and the ideas of national unity. They began to understand that why should we do like this, or USA has come to a unified system, why should we do like this? And they are interested to abolish the aristocratic privileges, cancel the aristocratic privileges. And what is this aristocratic privileges? What is this aristocratic privileges? By birth itself, first estate and second estate was not paying taxes. That is the aristocratic privileges, and it gained popularity, or larger group of people they began to think that why should we follow the system which was created earlier years in the Middle Ages in France. First estate, second estate, third estate, first estate and second estate is exempted from paying taxes. Why should we follow this system? So the new ideas which was created by the new middle class, which gained popularity all over Europe at that time. Then part 2, what did liberal nationalism stands for? What did liberal nationalism stands for? What did liberal nationalism? When you cut this liberal nationalism, you are able to get two words. First is liberty. Liberty means freedom. Liberty means freedom. Nationalism means feeling of oneness in the name of a nation. Or what does liberal nationalism mean for? So if you look at the ideas of liberty or liberalism, it is given from the Latin word liberty, which means freedom. It has a Latin root called as liber, which means freedom. And in the ideas of national unity was connected with the closely connected ideas of national unity was closely connected with the ideas of liberty. Or the term liberalism comes from the Latin root word which liber, which means freedom. And the new middle class group which was emerged, they want more freedom and they want more individual life and equality of all before the law. So for the new middle class people, the concept of liberalism means freedom for individual, equality of all before the law. At that time, equality of all before the law was not presented in Europe at that time. The first estate, second estate, third estate, the first and second was giving more privileges in the system. This was not interested by the new middle class. This was not interested by the new middle class. Politically, it emphasized the concept of government by consent. Then we are going in depth. Or the political viewpoint of the concept called as liberalism. In political viewpoints, how can I say? You must create a government in between, or create a government between the ruler and ruled. Who is the ruler? The government, or those people who we call them as many political executive or ministers. Ruled is the people. Consent, or politically, if you look at the concept of liberalism, there should be a government which is created on the basis of a consent. And in French Revolution, what does the meaning of the liberalism stands for? What does the meaning of liberalism stands for? In French Revolution, if you look at the concept of liberalism, end of autocracy. An autocratic ruler like the Louis XVI or Louis XIII is there. There should be an end to his rules, and an end towards clerical privileges. That is the concept of liberalism according to the French Revolution. And there should be a constitution. There should be a constitution. And there should be a representative government elected through parliament. So if you look at the concept of liberalism by according to the French context or France context. There should be a government should be created on the basis of a consent. And in the French Revolution, liberalism means there should be an end of autocracy and clerical privileges, end of the ruler or the domination of the ruler should be end. The concept of liberalism and clerical first state, second state giving priorities must be cancelled. There should be a constitution. What is constitution? Written should be created from the people. That is called, we call it as constitution. There should be a representative government. That we call it as national assembly in French context. In our country, it is Indian Parliament. Earlier, it was Imperial Legislative Council and Legislative Council. 19th century, the liberals they stress that private property should be permitted. Earlier, private property is not permitted. In the 19th century, the liberals they gave importance towards private property also. Liberals they gave importance towards private property also. If you look at equality, if equality before law does not necessarily stand for universal suffrage. Equality before law doesn't mean that everyone is getting equal opportunity before law. If you look at Indian context, if you look at French context, if you look at Indian context, French context, women is getting right to vote in the earlier. Woman is not getting right to vote in the earlier days of the systems. And universal adult suffrage or universal adult franchise is not practiced in the French context in the earlier days. Still they say that there should be equality. Equality or before law doesn't mean that everyone is able to get a chance to cast their votes. Everyone is able to get a chance to cast their vote. And you are recalling that then the revolutionary France and the first political experiment in the liberal democracy, right to vote was granted to the property of men. If you are having a property in your hand, you will get a chance to vote. And this was the political experiment in the system in terms of political liberalism, active citizens, passive citizens, and without property, man without property is not getting a chance to vote, and only for a brief period under the Jacobins did all these males enjoy equal suffrage. So under the rule of Maximilian Robespierre, all the adults enjoyed equal suffrage or equal vote was given to all the people. Equal right to vote was given to all the people in France. All the people in France in between the rule of Jacobins. When Napoleon came as the ruler of France, there was limited suffrage. When Napoleon came as the ruler of France, there was limited suffrage. And not only that, it reduced men into a status of a minor people subject to the autocracy of the fathers and husbands. So when Napoleon became the ruler of France, when Napoleon became the ruler of France, women were given as a status of a minor, and women was only permitted to act according to the interest of the father or the husband. And fathers they could now arrange marriages for the women, and that was the concept of womanhood during the Napoleon time. And in the 18th century, century. In the 19th, 18th century, if you look at the woman and the non-propertied sections of the society, non-propertied men. So if you look at, if you look at the non-property woman or men, non-property woman, non-property men, they are not getting equal political rights. So we came up to page number 9. Came up to page number 9. Read these all things, and if you have doubts, you can personally WhatsApp me. I'll clarify all your doubts anyway. Thank you. Have a nice day.